I am Sandra Tonslapidis, Area Vice President and General Manager of the RSA Conferences. We are happy to bring you this podcast series with sound bites and thoughts from our security professionals who will be participating at RSA Conference 2011 in San Francisco.
This is Jean Friedman, Content Manager for RSA Conference. Gopinath KN's session is titled Wireless Vulnerabilities in the Wild, View from the Trenches in the Hackers and Threats Track. Welcome, Gopi.
Thanks, Jean. My pleasure.
Great, it's ours too. Gopinath KN is Director of Engineering at AirTight Networks with more than 13 years of experience in systems, networks, and security with several patents and technical publications. He has devoted the previous 8 years to understand wireless security issues. So Gopi, everyone believes that wireless is one of the next biggest enterprise security threat. What have you discovered in your research?
I have discovered that wireless is a significant threat vector that enterprises need to worry about today. We have seen several instances where enterprises have had rogue APs and client extrusions. By rogue AP, I mean an unmanaged AP that is connected to an enterprise network. By client extrusion, I mean enterprise clients which are connecting to non-enterprise APs, for example, neighbors APs or some municipal APs that are around. From our study, which basically involves data from the last 2 years, we have found that about 40% of the organizations have had at least one instance of a rogue AP, and almost all the organizations that we have studied have had an instance of a poorly configured client, that is, a client that seeks connections to APs that are not enterprise APs. And this data clearly shows that enterprise wireless consumerization is definitely on, and people are sharing their laptops for both business and personal use, and moreover, non-enterprise grade, low-cost APs that are available in the electronic stores that are next to us are making their way into enterprise networks.
So what are the biggest wireless vulnerabilities that you see today?
Rogue APs seem to have garnered a reasonably good mindshare in the security community. We keep hearing about that quite often. However, interestingly, our research points out that that is not the most prominent threat today. Of the studied 10 wireless threat categories, we are seeing that client extrusion tops the list of wireless vulnerabilities. Client extrusions seem to be common because enterprise wireless clients are seeking connection to non-enterprise APs, many times with those that are open or insecure. For example, we are seeing that clients in an enterprise are probing for SSIDs such as default, Linksys, Netgear, which definitely they should not do this, right? So if any such AP is around an enterprise, such connection can happen automatically without the knowledge of the user. This is one scenario. Another scenario is such that a user or an enterprise employee may actually be deliberately trying to connect to these APs to violate enterprise security policies, right? So this behavior of Wi-Fi clients can be exploited by an attacker to launch man-in-the-middle attacks and compromise enterprise security. So this client extrusion is on the top of our list, and it is followed by rogue APs and misconfigured authorized APs as the next two major vulnerabilities.
So how do you see the evolution of these threats as more and more smartphones and applications are deployed worldwide, particularly for the enterprise?
As I mentioned earlier, client-based vulnerabilities are out there today, and they are the most prominent ones. And smartphones are only going to amplify this problem. As employee-owned smartphones make their way into enterprises, IT loses control over their configuration and the software tools that are deployed on them. As a result, a smartphone that connects to an insecure consumer-grade AP at home will seek those connections at the enterprise as well. And this clearly means that attackers will have more opportunities to try and connect to such enterprise smartphones. And another thing that is interesting is that most of the smartphones that are out there support a mobile hotspot mode. This can be used by employees to bypass security policies at will if they want to, and they can access, for example, sites that are otherwise restricted by enterprise firewalls, right? So this is the second aspect to it. And finally, given its form factor, a smartphone itself can be used to launch stealth mode man-in-the-middle attacks over Wi-Fi. So by this, what I mean is that honeypots, as we know today, require visible equipment such as laptops and large antennas, but with smartphone being available, people can use smartphones to create honeypots and just walk around an enterprise trying to lure clients into connecting to them and then launching a man-in-the-middle attack.
Wow. So what can enterprise security professionals do to protect their networks?
If you are deploying your authorized wireless LAN, please make sure that you implement WPA2, which provides very good security to your authorized wireless LAN. Unfortunately, we are seeing that even today, our data indicates that there are some authorized devices that are not WPA2. This needs to change. And once this is done, educate users to follow certain best practices. For example, clean up Wi-Fi profiles. Why should an enterprise client try to connect to tens of SSIDs? Our data clearly indicates that a good percentage of enterprise clients that we have studied are seeking more than 5 SSIDs. Ideally, an enterprise client should just try to connect to enterprise Wi-Fi. So we should educate users to clean up their Wi-Fi profiles periodically and also make sure that they connect only to secure networks when they are outside the enterprise. And there are tools readily available to automate functionality. Another important point is that just like the way customers are used to scan their wired networks for vulnerabilities, say those that come from the internet, they should also incorporate a policy to scan their wireless networks as well. The reason being, even if you deploy WPA2, there can be threats due to unmanaged devices such as rogue APs and client extrusions, which is what our data is indicating. And unless you do a scan, you will not be able to detect such vulnerabilities. And finally, if you are an organization that stores super sensitive information in your network, then you should consider deploying a wireless intrusion prevention system to contain wireless threats.
That's great advice. So what would you like your audience to most take away from your session?
The very first advice is that wireless threats due to unmanaged devices are there for real. We are seeing that from our data clearly, and the smartphone and wireless consumerization trend is only going to magnify this problem. So we have to accept this problem and try to solve it. I think that is the first takeaway. One important point to note here is that this problem can occur even if you do not have official Wi-Fi deployed in your organization, because these are unmanaged devices and they can be out there anywhere. And basically what I would like to advise the audience is that they should expect and plan for enterprise wireless consumerization while defining their security policy for 2011.
All right. Well, those are great points. So, Gopi, I think it's going to be a very productive session. I really appreciate you sharing a little preview of it. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jean. I'm really looking forward for the session and interact with the really knowledgeable audience.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the RSA Conference 2011 podcast series, and I hope to see you at RSA Conference in San Francisco.